My name has never truly mattered. For decades, people have called me by names that were never mine: Roland Doe, Robbie Mannheim, and others. My real identity was hidden from the public. And perhaps that was for the best. The world remembers me only as the boy who inspired The Exorcist. Whether what happened to me was supernatural, psychological, or something else entirely is still debated. I was 13 years old when my life changed forever. Until then, I was an ordinary boy. My days revolved around school, homework, neighborhood friends, and family dinners. There was nothing unusual about my life. Nothing that hinted I would one day become the center of one of history's most famous paranormal stories. The person I was closest to was my Aunt Harriet. She had always fascinated me because she believed in things most adults laughed at. She enjoyed talking about spirits and the possibility of communicating with those who had passed away. She owned a Ouija board, and although many adults dismissed it as a game, she treated it with curiosity and respect. Sometimes she invited me to sit beside her. We would place our fingertips lightly on the wooden planchette and ask simple questions. I never thought much about it. It was mysterious. It was exciting. Mostly, it was just another way to spend time with someone I loved. Then she died. Her death came suddenly. The house felt different after the funeral. My parents were grieving. The silence felt heavier than before. A few nights later, I woke to a scratching sound. It seemed to come from inside the wall beside my bed. I ignored it. The next night it returned. This time it lasted for nearly an hour. Every few minutes. Scratch. 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 My father searched the attic. Nothing. He checked beneath the floorboards. Nothing. An exterminator inspected the house for rats or squirrels. Nothing. The scratching continued anyway. Soon it wasn't just scratching. Heavy footsteps echoed above my bedroom every night. They sounded slow, deliberate, as though someone was walking across the ceiling. Whenever my father rushed upstairs to investigate, the sounds stopped. The moment he returned downstairs, they started again. Everyone in the house heard them. No one could explain them. Then something happened that terrified my mother. One evening, while we sat eating dinner, a framed picture hanging on the wall suddenly tilted sideways before falling to the floor. My father blamed an old nail. Minutes later, another picture fell. Then another. Within days, chairs shifted slightly across the wooden floor. Doors opened by themselves. A vase slid from the center of a table without anyone touching it. Each event could almost be explained individually. Together, they made no sense. The first time my bed moved, I thought I was dreaming. I woke in darkness. The mattress trembled beneath me. Not a little. Violently. The entire bed shook so hard I grabbed the blankets to keep from falling. I screamed. My parents rushed into my room. As they stood beside me, the bed continued shaking. My mother burst into tears. My father tried to hold the frame still. He couldn't. For the first time in my life, I saw genuine fear on his face. The nights became unbearable. I dreaded sunset. Sleep no longer brought rest. Sometimes I woke because my pillow had been thrown onto the floor. Sometimes my blanket disappeared. Sometimes I simply opened my eyes with the overwhelming feeling that someone else was standing in my room watching me. I never saw anyone, but I could never shake the feeling. Then the marks appeared. One morning my mother noticed scratches running across my chest. She assumed I had done it while sleeping. The next day there were more. Long, red, raised above the skin. Within hours they faded. Then new ones appeared elsewhere. Some witnesses later claimed that a few scratches resembled words or symbols. Whether they truly did or whether frightened people saw patterns where none existed has never been established. Doctors examined me. They checked for skin disorders, allergies, neurological conditions. They found nothing that explained the reports. Psychiatrists interviewed me. They asked about stress, family problems, school, dreams. I answered every question honestly. I didn't understand any of it either. As weeks passed, I noticed changes in myself. I became angry without knowing why. Little things made me furious. Sometimes I shouted at my parents and immediately regretted it. Other times I couldn't remember entire conversations. There were moments when people insisted I had said terrible things. I had no memory of saying them. My parents no longer knew what to do. Friends stopped visiting. Neighbors whispered. People crossed the street rather than speak to us. Eventually, someone suggested contacting a minister. A Lutheran pastor agreed to visit. He stayed in our home to observe. He prayed with us. He watched carefully, saying little. One night he remained in my bedroom. According to his later account, my mattress shook violently while I slept. A chair reportedly slid across the room. The minister left convinced that something beyond ordinary explanation might be happening. He advised my parents to seek help from the Catholic Church. The priests who met us did not immediately speak of possession. They questioned everyone. They interviewed my parents. They reviewed medical opinions. They wanted to eliminate every natural explanation before considering anything supernatural. Eventually, permission was granted for an exorcism. The first ritual was unlike anything I had imagined. The room was quiet except for the voices of the priests reciting prayers in Latin. Candles flickered. A crucifix rested on a nearby table. Holy water was sprinkled around the room. At first nothing happened. Then, according to those present, my behavior changed dramatically. The priests later described shouting, violent resistance, and unusual strength. I remember almost none of it. My memories come in scattered fragments. The smell of candle wax. Someone gripping my arm. Voices echoing through the room. Moments of complete exhaustion. Then darkness. The rituals continued for days. Then weeks. Sometimes they took place in our home. Sometimes in hospital rooms. Between sessions I felt drained. It was as though every ounce of energy had disappeared. The priests kept detailed notes after every encounter. Some entries described calm days. Others described furniture moving, unexplained noises, or fresh scratches appearing on my body. Not everyone believed them. Doctors remained skeptical. Some suggested psychological illness. Others believed fear and suggestion could explain many of the reported events. The priests believed they were witnessing something entirely different. My family stood between two worlds. One offered medical explanations. The other offered spiritual ones. Neither side could fully convince the other. Toward the end of the ordeal, those involved believed something changed. The outbursts became less frequent. The scratching stopped. The strange disturbances reportedly faded. One priest later wrote that I suddenly became calm and announced that the struggle was over. Whether that happened exactly as described is impossible to know today. What is known is that, after the final reported ritual, my life slowly returned to normal. I went back to school. I finished my education. I eventually found work. I married. I built a life far removed from the headlines. For decades I remained anonymous while rumors grew larger than reality. Books appeared. Journalists searched for me. Then author William Peter Blatty learned about the reported case and used it as inspiration for a novel. Years later, that novel became The Exorcist. Millions watched a little girl whose head rotated impossibly, who vomited green fluid, and whose bedroom became the setting for terrifying supernatural events. People assumed that was my story. It wasn't. The novel and film borrowed only the central idea of an alleged exorcism. Most of the famous scenes were invented for dramatic effect. Even today, no one knows exactly what happened in 1949. Some believe it was one of history's best documented cases of demonic possession. Others believe it reflected an undiagnosed medical or psychological condition, intensified by fear, grief, religious belief, and the expectations of those involved. The official records, witness accounts, and later recollections often disagree. That uncertainty is perhaps the most unsettling part of the story. The events inspired one of the greatest horror films ever made, but the truth behind them remains unresolved, suspended somewhere between history, memory, faith, and mystery.